Here we go. Woo!
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Timothy. It's nice to see you dancing behind the scenes. And also, good morning to everybody who is with us in Clubhouse right now. Well, I appreciate you being there this early on Sunday morning. And here, of course, once again, we have Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, government affairs, government relations, and public policy consultancy firm here in Tokyo. He is reporting from a different location today, so I hope that he's going to give you a little bit of information about his wanderings around the Tokyo Bay. And well, today we're here for the 183rd episode of Japanese Politics One on One. And as I have said quite a few times before, there are no summer holidays in politics. So we're going to hear what has happened during the past 1 week. Timothy, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Today is August 11th, 2024. It has been a very active week. Let me give you some top headline news and then come back with a little bit more details. Thank you very much, by the way. The 182nd episode was last week. We received a tremendous from everybody saying, congratulations and good job. And Maya, you should fire that guy and that sort of thing. So we really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Maya. And today I am reporting from Umenoshima, which is a marina in kind of downtown Tokyo, a yacht harbor actually with, I don't know, maybe 700 boats that are berthed here. It's really tremendous. I come here from time to time, but this is the first time for us to broadcast here. So I'm a little bit out of my element. I've secured a place here in the shade. Hopefully they won't kick me out so that they can sell Coca-Cola to the people who are coming. But it is the 3-day weekend. Tomorrow is also a national holiday, and we roll into Obon. Many companies are taking off a couple of days next week, some of them the whole week. And other companies are just leaving it up to the employees to take their annual leave. So it's a very active time. The roads are very heavy. But politically, as Maya said, there's no summer vacation in Japanese politics. It has been incredibly active, and things are lining up. Let me give you the top headlines. First of all, we reported here last week on Sunday that the markets were volatile. They had suffered a huge decrease. The yen had shot up, and to be prepared for something going on Monday, because it typically happens on that Black Monday, happened as the markets were reacting. So the Dow took a hit, and then the yen strengthened on Friday, and then on Monday, was Japan really walloped. They had their second, the 12.4% drop in the market on Monday. It was just tremendous. The second largest drop in history was just the Friday before. So I announced, we talked about it, we analyzed it a little bit, but the largest one happened on Monday, just after our broadcast. So the market was apparently watching what we were talking about. And let me make sure I can get this right. The yen went from maybe 160 to 141 in a span of maybe 5 weeks. It is just tremendous what happened there. There was also an earthquake, a major earthquake on Friday. You probably felt that in the Nankei Trough. The National Meteorological Agency issued a nationwide alert. First time that they've done this, and I think if you were in a dinner or something on Friday night, 7:20 or thereabouts, you received this alert, and it really caused a lot of concern and a lot of shock. The LDP election committee holds their second meeting on the 20th of this month, in about 10 days. They held their first meeting on the 7th, talking about some of the rules and some of the movements that they're going to initiate. and then the election campaign starts on the 20th. Probably, I'm sorry, they haven't even set that up. The election looks like it's going to be on September 20th, but that's not yet decided. The Constitutional Democratic Party did set up their election campaign, and they've decided they're going to elect their new leader. Kenta Izumi is currently their president, and they're going to go through their election. They messed up last time by Maya. Can you turn your mic off, please? I can hear your cat being strangled. There we go. Thank you. Um, they decided last 3 years ago to have their election for their Constitutional Democratic Party leadership at the same time, or it coincided with the LDP election, and everybody just was interested in the LDP election, and they said, let's not do it this time. Well, it looks like they're going to do it this time. Their election is decided for the 23rd of September, which is, you know, 20 days maybe 3 days after the supposed election of the LDP. So it's, once again, they're doing the same thing. And finally, just on top news, you might have heard, and I don't know, it wasn't in such big news previously. It's the end of the war. Nagasaki and Hiroshima suffered 79 years ago, and there was a memorial in Hiroshima, there was a memorial in Nagasaki, not celebrating, but memorializing these two events. And the Nagasaki mayor had decided that he was going to not send an invitation to the Russian ambassador, and similarly to the Israeli ambassador. That caused a huge brouhaha. Many of the G7 ambassadors refused. There was a big press release there that the equivalence of what Russia was doing with Ukraine is not equal to what's happening in Israel, and this is outrageous that you would exclude our friend Israel. And the Nagasaki mayor said, "Well, it's we're against war of any kind, and we want to protect people. And if this thing increases with Israel, the potential for once again nuclear weapons is enhanced, and we just want to put a claim on that." It was very uncomfortable. The prime minister attended both of those in Hiroshima and in Nagasaki. There's other things to talk about, far more impactful, but let me turn it over to Maya for a word from our sponsor, and then get into the beefy details. And then please don't forget, this is Japanese Politics One-on-One. You can contribute, you can participate in this dialogue. Email or send a message somehow to Maya, or come up on stage. Maya?
Yes, once again, thank you, Timothy, for letting me introduce our first sponsor, Kanchu.com. I know it's always a struggle, isn't it? Okay, so thank you very much indeed. And yes, the Kanachu.com and James Howell working there are our first sponsor, and we have been working with them for a while. James and Kanachu.com offer bilingual services in Japanese and English in the field of real estate or property buying and selling, and also rentals, home rentals in Yokohama. So if you are not confident with your Japanese here in Japan, please do not hesitate to contact James and Kanachu.com, because then you'll have your needs met, and their services are customized depending on what you need and what you want. So thank you very much, Timothy. And we can continue with getting deeper into each one of those headlines and the points you mentioned. So let's start with that and see how it goes. Hopefully, you're not going to melt. I cannot see you having a cap today or a hat. No sombreros out there. So please be careful. Yeah.
Oh, no, I have a cap. I have a cap. I'm in the shade right now, as you can tell, but the sun is moving because the sunrise is quickly approaching. But by the way, Maya, you and I are not very good at selling soap, even our own soap. We don't broadcast, too much what we do for a living, and
True.
please come to us and please use our services. We are, and you are particularly good at the work that we are involved in. But marketing and sales is not something that comes to us naturally. So we appreciate the audience, not participating, but accommodating this pitch every once in a while for our sponsors. And also, every once in a while, we say, please buy our soap and please look at our webpage and that sort of thing. But it's just a process of, we're doing this every Sunday, out of the goodness of our hearts. And we feel like we're pretty good at what we do. And the more people that know about us, the better the business is. So much for that. Getting back to, anything you want to say, Maya?
No.
Because I see you on the camera. No, you're good. Zip. Okay, so getting back to the markets, the markets have calmed down. It's almost by Friday. It's as if nothing happened. The volatility that is expressed there, you're familiar with NISA, the ability for Japanese consumers to invest in the stock market in a way that doesn't tax them for the benefits that they receive, the revenue that they receive to a certain point. So what Mr. Kishida is attempting to do is there's a tremendous amount of wealth. There is more wealth, there's more cash and personal savings and holdings of real estate and also commercial paper in the Japanese population that far exceeds the amount of debt that Japan has. So their debt to revenue ratio nationally is about 126 times. They have more debt than the revenue that they're producing. It's just astronomical. It's the most unique situation of any of the G20 countries. But the point is that the Prime Minister is attempting to encourage people to take that money that's in their nest egg under the mattress, that's being unproductive. And as you know, if you have money in the bank, it doesn't produce any interest rates that are going to sustain you at any point in time. And the banks are not very good at rewarding customers for sticking with them. So the government has come up with this program to invest and to receive a tax benefit for investing in the market. And so what happened on Friday and on Monday was just a terrible shock to the system. Many people are reacting to that and pulling out of the market, and that's the exact opposite what the Prime Minister wants to do. He's received a lot of criticism. The yen was strengthening. That was a good thing that was happening for many of the exporters, getting more money for what they were exporting rather than the other way around, that people come in, they see Japan is a bargain, the hotels are inexpensive, the food and the travel is inexpensive. So tourism in Japan has been very explosive, but the outbound has been very, very shallow. And with the strengthening of the yen, it closed out. Let me see. I didn't measure what it was today. It's not at 141. So the strongest it became was 141, and I think it came up to maybe 143. If you can check that, Maya, and let me know what the closing was on Friday. But the markets too. The markets lost 12% on Friday. They came back again. They lost 12% on Monday. And then they had the largest gain in market history on Wednesday. So it was a correction to the market, 10 point something percent on Tuesday. So there was a market correction. And by the time we get to Friday, it's like nothing ever happened. And this is just an enormous piece of news, a shock to the entire economy. And the Prime Minister, the Chief Cabinet Secretary, the Secretary of Finance, and the Governor of the Bank of Japan, Mr. Ueda, have been in the hot seat. And you might remember, we reported on this last week, that the Prime Minister had dinner 2 weeks ago, just before our briefing, on a Wednesday night with the Finance Minister, Mr. Suzuki, who is a member of the Aso faction. And then the next night he had dinner with Mr. Aso, his deputy prime minister. Normally you would think that this is a normal course of action, that they're in the cabinet with him, that they meet regularly in the cabinet office. Why is it such big news that they're having dinner together? But apparently it is. And then the market began to shake. So probably they knew something that was going on before it was going to be announced. So attempting to follow these things and read the tea leaves and analyzing it is very difficult, but I think very important to prepare you. Similarly, with the earthquake in Kumamoto Island, so it's quite south of Tokyo, and the Nankei trough it extends all the way up to Sugura Bay, which is um, on the other side of the Yokohama Peninsula. Um, uh, the fact that the earthquake happened on Friday was pre- predicted actually on, let me see, Wednesday. Wednesday, we were beginning to get some vibrations and also some advisories. You know, if you ever are experiencing an earthquake, this is what you should do. It wasn't really um, top of mind warning, but it was something that was curious. And then on Friday, the earthquake happened. It was a 7.1, a pretty large earthquake. No deaths reported. Maybe 3 buildings were damaged. 16 people have been reported as injured. So it wasn't such a huge deal. But since then, there have been more than 30 tremors in that area, right outside where Kumamoto City is. And at the same time, they issued a national alert. So there are 2 levels here. This is the first time that they've issued the alert. If a major earthquake has occurred and it looks like it's going to have a larger impact, they issue they've decided to issue a nationwide alert. If the earthquake had been larger than a 7.1, certainly if it was an 8, then they would have issued a warning. So it's at a higher level. The alert status stays there for about a week. So we're still in this state of alert. People are watching at the meteorological agency around the clock. They're watching this particular area and following it very closely. If things settle down, it looks like it will maybe just settle down for a bit. There's about a 100-year cycle. The latest big earthquake down there that killed several hundred people was about 78 years ago. So they are predicting that it is about time for some seismic activity there. At the same time, you might have noticed, I'm sure you did if you're in Tokyo, there were 2 or 3 earthquakes centered right in Kawasaki, right around Tokyo. So that was very unsettling, probably a number 4. Once again, that happened around dinner time on Friday. So the time coinciding with what was going on in the Kumamoto prefecture and then what happened in Tokyo is unsettling given the distance that they are, but they still line on the same seismic line that extends all the way to the Philippines, in fact. So the LDP took a bit of a hit on managing the response to that, but the Prime Minister was on TV within hours, within minutes. The Chief Cabinet Secretary was on managing, expectations and telling people to be calm. Moving on from there, the LDP Election Committee, as I said, held its first meeting on the 7th, just this last week. And a couple of things came up. Mr. Shigeru Ishiba is a candidate. He essentially announced his candidacy. This week, he published a book, which is essentially a manifesto of what his administration would look like. So he hasn't publicly said, I'm running for office, but he's published a book. He's been working on the book. He published it on Wednesday, but he went to the election committee and he said, you should change the election committee rules a little bit to accommodate the LDP, particularly the younger LDP diet members, so that they have more of a say, they have more of a vote. And this is curious. I think Mr. Aizawa, the chairman, who is also about a 12-term member. Mr. Ishiba is a 12-term member, and Mr. Aizawa is also a 12-term member. So they've known each other for 30 years. But for Mr. Ishiba to come forward and say, look, you should give the vote a little bit more heavier weight of the vote to the younger members was quite curious because, as we know, Mr. Ishiba has a certain popularity among the younger Diet members. He's liked by some, he's disliked by some. You might remember that he didn't run in the last election when Konotaro tied up against Mr. Kishida. There were 4 candidates then. As we move towards the new election, which probably in the next meeting of this election committee, which will be on the 20th, they will decide the terms and conditions and the date of the election. And then we anticipate people will be coming out of the woodwork. We kind of know that Mr. Kishida is going to run, although once again, like Mr. Ishiba, he hasn't said so, but he did something very curious this last week. I reported it in our synopsis, I believe, that he's now interested in the constitutional revision, which is very curious, especially given this very tense week with Nagasaki and Hiroshima memorials happening at the same time. And coming from Hiroshima, Mr. Kishida is also more of a dove rather than a hawk. So for him to come up suddenly and say, let's get back to constitutional revision, he promised it in his election for prime minister the last time, 3 years ago. I will take care of constitutional revision in my first term, and he didn't. Now he's coming back before the election of LDP president, and he has said, I'm now committed to constitutional revision. It's curious because the one party or the one faction within Japanese politics that is most adamant about changing the constitution, always has been, is the Abe faction, the former Abe faction. But as those of you who continue to participate in this program know, although there has been a dissolution of the factions, they still exist in a spiritual form that people still get together. They don't have an office where they manage it, but certainly it's too valuable to just toss away. And what the prime minister is attempting to do is cozy up or encourage the Abe faction members, the largest faction in the LDP, almost by a factor of 2 compared to the second largest faction. They're still tight, even though in an election for prime minister, we don't anticipate that people will be instructed by their faction leaders to vote a certain way. That era is behind us. So people in the Diet, members of the Diet, have been instructed to vote with their own conscience. Still, they tend to vote as a group. With the Abe faction wanting and insisting on constitutional revision, for the prime minister finally to say that, now he's cozying up to the Abe faction members to say, I'm your guy. When it comes time for the election, please remember what I'm going to do for you. So it's essentially him saying, I'm going to run, because he's sticking his neck out to court the Abe faction. This happened on Wednesday. It was widely reported, and in some quarters quite applauded the strategic genius of the prime minister to do this, to bolster his standing within the party. So, as you might know, the election of prime minister, it's one round if there are 2 candidates, and whoever gets the most votes becomes prime minister. If it's 3 candidates or more, they have a first round, and if somebody gets 50%, they become prime minister. But if it's a draw, especially if there's 4 people, like there was the last time, they have to go to the second round. So nobody has received a plurality. Nobody is clearly elected by the voters of the campaign, and so it goes into the second round. And in the second round, they pick number 1 and number 2, and they have a runoff. That's what happened last time. Konotaro did extremely well in the first round, and in the second round, Mr. Kishida came through. In the next election, we don't anticipate just 4 candidates. We anticipate 5, maybe. At least there'll be 4. There could be as many as 9 candidates. And this really makes the competition and the calculus much more difficult. At the same time, if you've got 9 candidates, everybody needs 20 endorsements. There are 366 members of the LDP. You need to have 20 endorsements if there are 9 candidates. That's 180 endorsements. It's awful difficult to foresee that. Certainly, the prime minister is not going to have trouble getting 20 endorsements. Mr. Ishiba he had a party this last week, a luncheon party for his supporters. Maybe 7 or 8 people showed up. It is, obviously a hot time in the city, so a lot of people are back in their constituencies. If they don't have committee responsibilities, the Diet is not in session. Still, there is lots of work that's going on. Mr. Ishiba is going to run. I think we can say that with a high degree of confidence. Kono Taro is in a different ball of wax. He only had 4 contenders last time, and he did surprisingly well. This time, he's going to have more than the contenders that he had last time, plus the inclusion of Mr. Ishiba. So in popularity polls, Mr. Ishiba ranks very high among the rank and file LDP and among the general population. And when there is an LDP election, the LDP members get 1 vote, and then the members of the LDP get another vote. The votes are somewhat weighed in round 1. In round 2, they are heavily weighed towards the Diet members. And that's why when it came push to shove with Mr. Kishida and Mr. Kono Taro last time, it flipped very quickly because it's the LDP members, the Diet members who have the majority of the sway in their votes. So it's going to be interesting for Kono Taro. And as you remember, not to get too much into the weeds, but I think it's important to point out, and most of you already know this, Kono Taro is a member of the Aso faction. He needs Mr. Aso's blessing to run, and he sure as hell would like his endorsement. I don't know if he got his endorsement last time. I think the last time Mr. Aso didn't publicly support Kono, and this time I don't think he will either. We reported that they had dinner, a long dinner, 2 weeks ago. The outcome of that is not quite reported or understood yet, but it looks like he is going to run, but not with the endorsement of Mr. Aso. Mr. Aso, it appears to be, is more closely tied to the prime minister. And if it's not the prime minister, then maybe the LDP General Secretary, Mr. Motegi. You might remember that in the absence of the Abe faction, the government in the last couple of years has been run by a triumvirate, which was Mr. Kishida, Mr. Aso, and Mr. Motegi. And because of decisions and the kickback scandal and Mr. Kishida deciding on his own, I'm going to ban the factions, there was a rift caused between the 3 of them, and Mr. Aso and Mr. Motegi were opposed to Mr. Kishida. So Mr. Kishida was doing things pretty much on autopilot for the last maybe 6 or 7 months of his administration until the Diet closed up. So it's a very tense situation, but I think Mr. Aso and Mr. Kishida have mended ties. It's like in Washington, D.C., they say if you want a friend, get a dog. And these kinds of rifts, they're short-lived. It's the numbers that count, especially in election campaign. So that's what's being set up there. I apologize for going so long on it, but it's critically important to understand, because when the news comes out that the candidates have made an announcement, it's based on a calculation that they have come up with. And they get this calculation, they understand what their standing might be by reading the public opinion polls. So a poll was just released. The numbers were crunched. The poll was taken in July. It is today is the August 11th. So the numbers were crunched and they were released this week. Let me go through them because they are instructive. So in the public opinion poll, people that were polled said they like Shigeru Ishiba as a candidate for prime minister. listen to these numbers. I'm going to go through many of the candidates who have been identified. So put yourself in their shoes with these numbers that they know too, and wonder to yourself about throwing your hat into the ring. And also, if you're a potential endorser for them, also pay attention. So Ishiba is scored at 18.7%. Shinjiro Koizumi is number 2 at 12.5%. Sanai Takaichi is at 6.5. Konotaro falling down at 5.2. And Fumio Kishida and Yoko Kamikawa both come in at 4.7%. That means 4.7% of those polled said, I would like them to be prime minister or run for prime minister. So Mr. Ishiba currently holds the pole position by far. Number 2 is Shinjiro Koizumi, who in a dinner maybe 4 weeks ago with his father, they did announce some of the discussions that were being held, and the former prime minister said, no, I don't think my son is ready to run. I think he needs a little bit more seasoning, so I think he'll sit out this election. It seems like there is a groundswell of trying to encourage him to run for election, and if these numbers prove true, he would carefully weigh that option. The others that are in the realm, but probably not close to a cigar, are LDP Secretary Toshimitsu Motegi, Seiko Noda, both coming in at 1%, and a newcomer, not a newcomer, but a 4-term lower house member from Chiba, Mr. Takayuki Kobayashi. He comes in at 0.3%, but there's building momentum in endorsing him as a potential candidate for prime minister. So this is 9 people here that are potentially candidates. Mr. Kobayashi is, I wouldn't discount him. He's young. He's got a lot of support from the younger members of the LDP, and the younger members, as you know, the younger members are 2, maybe 3-term members. They've been in the diet position for less than maybe 10 years, less than 10 years. And that comprises 50% of the entire population of the 366 LDP members. So Mr. Kobayashi is being supported by Akira Amari. You might have remembered him. He was in the upper house, in the lower house, got caught in something of a scandal. He had to resign as Secretary General, actually, before Mr. Motegi. Still very popular. In any event, the cabinet approval, we talk about this quite a bit. It went up from, it was in the mid-teens, actually. It came up 3.9%. The diet is out of session, so a lot of the heat is off the prime minister and the cabinet. They're out doing things. They're much more visible now. So the approval rating went up a little bit, almost 4%. It is now standing at 19.4%, which is not tremendous. It's not something you're going to toot your horn at. The disapproval of the cabinet actually decreased about 4.8%. It is now standing at 53%. So that means the people that are dissatisfied, they want to change, 53% of the people polled are expressing that disapproval. When asked, who are you going to vote for if there is an election, 28.8% said, I'm voting LDP. The Constitutional Democratic Party came in at 9%, 9.9%. That's almost a factor of 5. Ishin came in at 6% and Kumamoto at 3.4%. So when asked, do you want the LDP to continue in the leadership role and to continue to guide this country, excuse me, 42.7% said yes. And almost 30% said no, I want the opposition to form some sort of a coalition, or I'm going to vote for the opposition because they should push the LDP out and we want a change in the government. Almost 30% of those polled said that. And let me see, I've got just a little bit more details here. I apologize for the numbers and the statistics, but it is pretty important. When asked, when do you want to see an election for the lower house, 36.2% said within a year. So the importance of having the new LDP prime minister or the new LDP president, thus the prime minister, means that the winner of the election is going to oversee the election of the upper house and an election for the lower house. They're both going to occur this year. So when asked, when do you want to see that election to happen? 36% said within the year, and then 18.9%, almost 19% said naturally when the term ends in October. So let it run its course and have the elections when the lower house finishes and when the upper house finishes in their normal course of business. So apparently there is a sentiment within the government or within the population. We want change. We want vitality. We don't like the current prime minister. When it comes to what party you support, they ask people, what is your party affiliation? 20% said, I belong to the LDP. And then it just falls down. It's the LDP at almost 20%, and then the Constitutional Democratic Party at 3.7%, Kumamoto at 2.2%, Ishiba at 1.8%, the Japanese Communist Party at 1.3%, the Democratic Party for the People we talk about all the time because they're very much of a swing party, 1%. Reiwa Shinsengumi is 0.7%. Shinseito is 0.4%. The Social Democrats at 0.2%. And the Free Education for All Party that was set up as an offshoot of the Constitutional Democratic Party breakup earlier in the year at 0.1%. The number of people who said, I have no party affiliation, I don't give a damn, I'm going to vote when I go to the booth, they do vote, that was 65.5%. That are the swing vote. These are the people that can be encouraged or guided to vote for one person or another because of the way that their hairstyle looks or the policies, maybe the policies that they talk about, though few talk about the policies. Mr. Ishiba came out with a whole book on his manifesto, so that's pretty exciting.
So there's a lot.
I'm sorry,
I'm hearing an echo there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nope, I still got it.
Okay. How about now?
I'm still hearing
my own voice.
All right. Let me see what I can do.
Are you hearing it too?
No, I am not.
Okay, then I'll just continue to go forward. I've got two more points I want to make. In the current dynamics now, you've got something of a battlefield forming in two, perhaps three different sectors. You've got Mr. Aso, the deputy prime minister, who holds sway. He's the only faction that hasn't dissolved. They still have their office. They still hold their meetings. Mr. Aso still has, pretty strong control over his numbers. So not only is he the largest faction, he's the only standing faction. And that has enhanced his power. So a very clever move on his part. I think he's probably not getting criticized because everybody in the factions, they disbanded and you're the only one. You don't hear that. And he is actually a political individual of hefty weight. So he is probably not going to run in the next election. He will turn the reins of power over to somebody else, probably maybe his son. There's no speculation there because he's fit, he's very lively, he's in charge of a lot of things going on. Anyway, there's a group that's forming around him, and I think of his favorite for Mr. Aso, he wants Mr. Kishida, which is kind of strange, but you want to go with the winner. So go with the sure thing, and if Mr. Kishida has my vote, he's going to win. And if I put my weight against him to somebody else, the likelihood of them winning is high, but not as high as if I stick with the current prime minister, even though his approval ratings are in the high teens. So if it's not him, then my good friend Mr. Motegi, who I've been helping to manage the government and being against Mr. Kishida on certain issues, so it might be him. The question becomes, so how about Mr. Konotaro, who is in your faction? He's run 3 times, twice. He's going to run again. Are you going to support him or leave him out in the dark? That's a very uncomfortable move. I think in any event, Mr. Konotaro will run, whether he has Mr. Aso's endorsement or not. The other side is Mr. Suga, former prime minister, who has a bone to pick with Mr. Kishida. He was prime minister before Mr. Kishida and believes that because of Mr. Kishida, he lost that position and is no longer prime minister. So he holds a bit of a grudge against him. And so whatever Aso is going to do with Mr. Kishida, Mr. Suga is going to do something different. So in the Suga camp, he is supporting Mr. Ishiba primarily, and then he's got Mr. Koizumi in his on his team, I guess you could say, or in his bailiwick. And then you've got a floater of Mr. Kono. How about supporting Mr. Kono, Mr. Suga? They are both in the same Kanagawa district. They know each other, as all politicians know each other. They are in friendly terms. But it's a dicey thing. So right now, I've just mentioned 5 people who are in the running in these 2 different camps. Recently, as I mentioned, you have Mr. Amari of a great guy. He was very much involved in the trade negotiations with the United States. His English is good. I think I don't think he's Harvard, but he's got an MBA from one of the top schools in the United States, very well credentialed. And he's coming up with Mr. Kobayashi Takayuki, who I mentioned just a little bit. Takayuki Kobayashi is interesting because he's young. I think he's maybe 43 or 44, a 4-time member of the Diet. So the younger members like him, and the younger members, comprising more than 50% of the LDP, want change. They want somebody new. They are worried that when the election happens, whether it happens immediately after the new prime minister is selected or the new LDP president is selected, there is a range of time between then and the end of the year that it is likely for there to be a lower house election. Alternatively, it runs its course, or there's a snap election sometime in the new year. I'm not sure what the possibility is there. I kind of like the possibility of it happening earlier rather than later, but they are worried about them being elected in light of the shadow of the kickback scandal that's still there. We try and push it off. We try not to talk very much about it, but still, the voters remember that, and the LDP has not won a serious election since the kickback scandal. There have been several by-elections, governor's elections, and the LDP has lost every single one of them. So the story is that if the LDP does have an election anytime soon, they're going to get their butts kicked, losing possibly even the majority, which means that their relationship with Komeito and maybe cozying up to Ishin, which seems a little bit unlikely given the snafu that they had, or I don't know, certainly the Democratic Party, people for the party, although its numbers don't really carry much sway for somebody in a situation that wants to maintain a majority of either the lower house or the upper house. So there's a lot of calculations that's going on there. And like I said, potentially 9 candidates in this election. As the days come by, especially as we approach September, we're going to know more about that, and continue to report that to you. I hope it's of interest to you. It's not too deep in the woods, and yeah, please keep your questions coming. And as I said, Mr. Ishiba published his book. Mr. Kishida announced about constitutional revision. Those are 2 signals that both of them are guaranteed to run. So we've got 2 that are already down. Mr. Kono, we're curious about him. He is a favorite of the foreign and the diplomatic community because he's affable. His English is impeccable. He's been a candidate. People know of him and know why he's liked and why he's disliked, and some of the reasons why he's disliked. It has a kind of an appealing factor to it. I like him a lot, actually. So we'll see what happens there. And finally, Maya, the Tokyo governor, we have a new governor. She's replaced herself, Koike Yuriko. We went to the governor's election just this last week. She threw out the first pitch of, Japanese baseball is so popular here. It is just, it's wild, it's crazy. And it's going to get wilder and crazy as the United States sends two teams in their opening in the spring for their opening games here in Tokyo. They'll play two games. So baseball is huge here. She threw in
the first game with
the
Tokyo Yokohama Tigers.
Where was it?
Where was it? The Meiji Jingu Stadium here in Tokyo.
She threw
the ball in. Her knee crumpled. She's 72 years old, so good for her. And fell to the floor and was immediately taken to the hospital for throwing the first ball in. It's not going to affect her performance as governor, but a funny thing happened on the way to the office. I hope she has a great recovery, and not making fun of it. It's just an interesting slant at what goes up in Tokyo every day. Maya, that's it for me. I can still hear this echo in my background, but let's open it up for Q&A.
Yes, thank you very much for this, Timothy. And before we go into the Q&A session and answer all the questions we have accumulated so far, I would like to give a shout out to our second sponsor, that is Houze Inc. and Hana Urushizawa Howell. Houze Inc. is also based in Yokohama, and they also offer services in English in addition to Japanese. So if you are looking for home design services or for commercial properties and also reconstruction, please do not hesitate to contact Hana. You'll find Hana's contact details in the description of the YouTube video. Also, you can contact with her on LinkedIn, so please do not hesitate to do that once you are in need. And well, Timothy, so thank you for the briefing once again. We have quite a few questions, as I mentioned. I'll start with them. So the first one was on LinkedIn from Yuka, and it is a long one. So please, okay, bear with me while I'm reading through it. So basically, it is a multi-layered question. So let's see. Can you hear me, Timothy? You are on mute.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. I'm doing that so I can move out of the sunshine.
All right. Okay, so the question, Yuka's question is on how Japanese politicians communicate their intentions to the general public. So, Mr. Aso had a dinner with Mr. Moriyama last week. During the dinner, Mr. Aso praised Mr. Kishida's administration, saying that Mr. Kishida is making a progress. A progress, but a progress on what? I am not sure. So my question is, number one, does this mean that Mr. Aso is supporting Mr. Kishida's re-election? Number two, Mr. Aso comments were intended for public ears. So are the comments during the media. So are the comments during the media reported by the media? Are they a typical way in which politicians communicate? Sorry for this.
Maya, I'm hearing my voice again.
Yeah, there is. You can hear an echo there.
Yes,
after I say something,
I hear it.
Okay.
I hear it back.
I see. I have been playing with the sound settings in the background in real time because, well, it looks like now the sound in Clubhouse is better.
Okay.
Let me just stop attention to what my voice is saying then.
How about now?
Let me answer the question.
Okay.
No, you still hear it.
It's still here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it means that we have incompatible platforms once again. Incompatibility between Clubhouse and StreamYard. So I'm sorry for that.
Okay.
Let me try and get to the question.
A great
question, by the way.
And
Yes.
of course,
the
the
politicians
politicians
this
speak
way
this way
through
through
the press.
the
They
press.
use
They
the
use
press.
the press.
Um,
Um,
when I was a
when I was
member
a
of the
member of the
parliamentary staff
parliamentary
at
staff at
Nakayama,
Nakayama,
we would go
we would
throughout the
go
day.
throughout the day.
Usually,
Usually, I
in the
would
car.
in the
Diet members have a
diet members
car
have a
assigned to
car
them, so
assigned to
you
them, so
run
you
throughout
run
town.
throughout
I
town.
was with
I
him
was with
almost
him
the
almost
entire
the
time.
entire time.
And when I would
And when I
drop
would
him off
drop him
at
off
night,
at night,
maybe at around
maybe
eight
at around
o'clock
eight
after
o'clock after
a couple of
a couple
speeches
of
or maybe a
speeches or
dinner,
maybe a dinner,
there's always a
there's always a
cackle of
cackle of
reporters waiting
reporters
for him,
waiting for him,
and they will go
and they will go
upstairs.
upstairs.
He'll be
He'll
invited.
be
They'll
invited. They'll
go into his
go into
apartment,
his apartment, and
cigarettes
smoke
and drink
cigarettes and
beer,
drink beer,
uh,
uh,
eat something, but
eat
they
something,
have
but they
chat
have
check
chat
off the
check
record,
off the record.
and that's
And
how they
that's
get
how
their
they get their
messages out.
messages
But
out. But
more
more
specifically,
specifically,
for
for
example,
example, we
we had
had
this
this
dinner with
dinner with
um,
um,
Koizumi and several of the people that we mentioned earlier, where Koizumi, the father of Shinjiro, mentioned, yes, we talked about my son running, but I just don't think it's the appropriate time. That was planned. That was planted. That was done with an effective purpose. And maybe the purpose was, if there's, it's like with products too, if there's rarity in availability, their value goes higher. And similarly with Mr. Koizumi, if the public is told he's not going to be running, then maybe they want him even more. And that apparently has happened. So with Mr. Aso making these statements, yes, it means, and he wants it to be understood to mean that he supports Mr. Kishida. And so understanding what the politicians are saying and what it means requires a little bit of a sieve. It's, it's people like me, it's the Japanese press, it's people that follow them and parse their words and try and interpret what in fact it means. So we can say with some degree of high certainty that Mr. Uh, Aso is going to support Mr. Kishida. And that means if he's not going to be supporting other people, those other people need to make their own plans. And they need to do it quick because they're not going to be getting the endorsements. The people that potentially will endorse them also hear this and they go, yeah, I don't know. I wanted a cabinet position. And if I vote for you, or if I give you the endorsement, even if I don't vote for you, I endorse you because I want you to be a candidate. But when push comes to shove and it comes time to vote, I don't vote for you because there's no obligation there. And it's a secret vote anyway. Um, I want that cabinet position, and voting or endorsing you is going to diminish that. So everybody loves a winner. Everybody wants to enhance their own positions, particularly the younger Diet members. They want to be survived again, and they want the new prime minister to be somebody they can brag about to their constituency so that they win in the next election. I hope that's somewhat responsive, Maya. Good question.
Yes, thank you, Yuka. Yes, if you need more clarification, please let us know, and we'll address that again. So this is actually a spin-off question from one of Hiroaki's questions on YouTube. So, do you think that there is any possibility for the LDP to postpone its presidential election until November or even next year?
Uh, Hiroyuki is another potential candidate for prime minister that I didn't mention. That people are talking about it. But thank you, Hiroyuki. I really greatly appreciate you. Always have intensely interesting and deep questions. When I first heard Maya report your question, is there any possibility for them to delay or postpone? My initial reaction is no. Why would they? But I think there's probably a little bit more depth to your question. I think you're asking a different kind of question. And so that makes me pause and say, yes, it's possible. They could do that. There could be, a major earthquake. There could be some missile from North Korea. It's just a volatile time. It is an incredibly volatile time. It's not just volatile here in Japan or geopolitically in this region. In the United States, it's just tremendous. Um, I don't know, confusion or uncertainty that the world is facing. And as the markets instructed us last week, it's deep and it's meaningful. So yeah, there could be a possibility of that, but I think the general population is looking for a response and a political response so that the business of government can continue unhindered and with confidence. Very few people have confidence in the prime minister and his cabinet, as the numbers showed out. And an election is going to help pave that way. So what will happen is in the presidential election, whoever wins, what they're going to say is the population has made their voices heard. And as an endorsement, I want to give them the opportunity to vote for the members of the lower house. So I'm going to close down the house so that we have a complete unity of purpose of mind. That comes up pretty frequently and is a likely scenario. So Hiroyuki, if you have a little bit more insight into what the question's about, I'd appreciate that, and it might make the discussion a little bit more lively. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I'll continue with another question from Hiroake, once again on YouTube. It's about,
Here we go.
Yes. Okay, so if Mr. Ishiba, so of course we know that he's an LDP presidential candidate, but okay, if he doesn't win that, that election, and he doesn't become prime minister, the question is, what do you think? Which ministry should he become the head of in government?
That's a good question. This is his. He's run 4 times, and not won. And I think if he runs again and he doesn't win, yes, generally the contenders get a position because the people have spoken, they've voted. He's received 20% of the vote, so you can't just discount them. You can't just throw them out with the trash. He does require something. But given the tension and the treatment that he received in his request to enhance his voting possibility by giving the younger voters, I mean, he was essentially laughed out of the meeting. I don't know, but I think it will not be a hugely powerful position, and it could be an LDP position. So there's a cabinet position, and then within the LDP organization, there are LDP positions. 4 of them are the most important. And since he scores really high among the LDP rank and file members, the Diet members, that might be a good and safe place to put him. But really depends on who the prime minister is going to be. And but his image, I don't know if you've noticed it, but he's lost weight. He's used hair coloring. I understand that he's hired a makeup person to help him improve his image. So he's really committed. He's looking forward to it. It's somewhat curious. I'm not mentioning this because it's funny or I'm ridiculing it. It's a part of appealing to people. He's really in for the whole game. So it'll be an interesting race to watch.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the answer there. And we have quite a few more questions. So in Clubhouse too, but I'm going through them based on the theme and then the theme thread and also time. So since we are talking about the elections, and there is a question from Hiroko-san on LinkedIn. And the question starts with PM Kishida cancelled his trip to Central Asia, meeting with the atomic bomb victims who are not recognized as atomic bomb victims because they were outside of the city of Hiroshima or Nagasaki, within an area of approximately 2 kilometers from the hypocenter, and raising the issue of the constitution revision. Okay, are all these actions in anticipation for the LDP leadership election?
Oh, certainly, I think it is. But I think the characterization is a little bit off. Is this from Hiroko?
From Hiroko-san, yes.
Yeah. So who he meets when he goes, so there are a couple of things going on here. Yes, he canceled his visit to Central Asia, to Kazakhstan, to a couple of the countries there. There's a big conference that he was scheduled to speak at. and he canceled it because of the earthquake on Friday. So I don't think it has anything to do with what was going on in Nagasaki and in Hiroshima memorials. The people who are invited to these memorials are dictated by the mayors of the city. So the decision not to invite the ambassador from Israel was the prime minister had nothing to do with that. He says he had nothing to do with it. I kind of believe it. I think um, in Hiroshima, he comes from Hiroshima, so maybe you could say he had some influence there. Maybe the idea was, hey, Mr. Prime Minister, maybe we shouldn't invite Israel, and maybe he countermanded that. In Nagasaki, it's a different situation. He's not from Nagasaki. Nagasaki has their own way of doing business, and they don't want to be pushed around by the central government. They made the decision with regard to inviting and not inviting. So I think there's a little bit of bleeding of issues there. And I apologize if I'm totally inaccurate there. But the fact that he canceled his trip was not related to Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Hiroko-san. I hope this answers your question. If you have follow-up questions, please let us know. I'll read them out to Timothy. And Timothy, okay, so you gave us a list of possible candidates for the leadership of the LDP, and also premiership here. The top position in Japan. Um, and you mentioned that probably Koizumi-san is going to sit this election out. But at the same time, I wonder, so is there any sense among the LDP members and the leadership that with this, non-interest in Japanese politics by the younger generations, they do need to have at least 2 or 3 more younger candidates there? Is there any sense of urgency when it comes to including younger candidates?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. Who's that from?
From me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know you don't expect it. Yes, I know, but yes.
No, that's a great question, and the urgency that you're mentioning is palatable within the LDP. 50% of the LDP members are within their third term, and they want to be heard and they want to be reelected. If you're going to lose your election, you're going to lose your election the second time. The highest possibility is you lose it the second time. You won somehow. You wrote a book, or you're famous for some reason, but then you're in the parliament and your constituency is not very happy about it. You've bought a new car, you've been flashy, that sort of thing. The second highest possibility for you to lose is in your second. So the mortality rate is very high. In the third, it stabilizes, and in the fourth, maybe you're going to be a career politician until you die, and then your son is going to take over for you. So that's the typical game plan. So these guys want to win again. They must win again, and it depends on when you have your poster for "Vote for Me." Hi, vote for me. In the
Yes.
background is going to be the photo of the prime minister, who is, so he's endorsing you, or you're touting his policies as well as a Diet member. And if it's somebody like Mr. Shigeru Ishiba, who is not typically very attractive person, he's got some jowls and he looks somewhat stern. So his image is being managed and created and crafted for that purpose. But having somebody young on the poster, the campaign poster, that brings it out. That really does excite the population. It excites young people. They'll go out and vote. So the voting population, typically the voter turnout is in the 30s, the high 30s, very rarely in the 40%. I think in the governor's election, it was about 37% turned out for the vote.
Right.
Similar to the last time there was a governor's election, it was almost the same number of people who went out to vote. But if you have some injection of novelty, or certainly a young Diet member running against the prime minister, it's going to bring more people out to vote. That doesn't really impact much when it's the president of the LDP, because the people who vote for the president of the LDP, it's not everybody, it's not Japanese people, it's LDP members
It's the
and it's
members
diet
there.
members within the LDP. So
Yeah.
it's a very very minute microcosm, and it's somewhat represented by the general population, like the poll numbers that I read earlier in the briefing. It's
Mhm.
somewhat represented by that, but it's really much more concise um, um selection of the population. And yes, I think that they would be uh, terrifically energized by somebody that was coming up new. Although the numbers show that although his popularity is not very high, um, the specific dynamics of electing the president of the LDP favor Mr. Kishida. And if Mr. Aso is
Right.
going to stand behind him, then it's going to be Mr. Kishida. And that means for these fellows who are 2 or 3 term members, and they think that Mr. Kishida is going to be in the background, they don't quite like it. They don't feel a sense of accomplishment, or that they're going to win the election. So yes,
Mhm.
should Koizumi run? It's possible that he does. Or should Mr. Kobayashi, which I think is probably a higher possibility. He's really inching up in the poll numbers. So something clearly to watch. And once again, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in on your very valuable Sunday morning. We'll continue to watch this. It's intensely interesting, and it carries great import for the country and for the economy and for typical policies that the Japanese government is pursuing. So thanks for staying tuned.
Thank you. And whichever platform you're using, please remember to give us a like or to leave a comment. Just say hi so that we know that you're there. If you haven't subscribed yet, or if you haven't followed us, remember to do that too. So the next question, Timothy, on YouTube is from Surya Bumantara, and she writes, with many semiconductor companies investing in Japan, do you think Japan could once again be a manufacturing powerhouse like it was in the 80s and the
Yeah,
90s? Or do you think the shrinking workforce is going to stop Japan from doing that comeback?
that's a great question. Who's this from?
From Surya Bumantara on YouTube. Yes. So sorry, I may be mispronouncing your name, Surya. Please forgive me if I'm doing that.
Thanks
Just
for joining the briefing, and thanks for the great question. So, absolutely, Japan, this current administration, the prime minister in particular, Kono Taro, they want Japan to return to the powerhouse status. So, there are a
yes.
couple of industries that Japan wants to focus on and put a lot of money into, because they see that that's where the future is. So, one of those is AI. The other
Mhm.
one is the defense industry, the defense intelligence industry. They want to bolster that. They want to build machines and aircraft and bombs and missiles and sell them throughout the world. They want to have that kind of new industry. And the third one, and maybe even the more important, is the chips and condensers and memory market. So what they're doing in Kumamoto and what they're doing in Hokkaido is really important. And they want, when everything is said and done, when the concrete is poured and they've got the machinery in there, they're actually building it for the technology that's not quite available yet. It will be available when the structures are there and the infrastructure is there, and the technology that has emerged between now and then will be the primary technology. And Japan wants to be at the forefront of that technology. So in Hokkaido with Rapidus, they want to make really nano thin memory chips, and the technology is coming up with even more exotic materials and rare earth materials. And in Kumamoto, they want to encourage TSMC. TSMC is, I think everybody knows, the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing powerhouse. All of the chips, maybe 90% of the big chips, the powerful chips, are produced in Taiwan. And with the tension between Taiwan and China, they're looking for in terms of just supply chain management and stability, to just have a replicated plant someplace else. So they're building in the United States and they're building in Japan. They've already encouraged them to have one plant, and they've expanded to the second plant. And these plants generally take about 8 years to
Mhm.
be completed. So
Right.
very definitely, Japan is on a roll, and give it a couple of years, and Japan will dominate the chip market. I'm pretty confident of that, for the amount of money that the Japanese government is pouring into that, for subsidies, for encouraging people to come in. They've got Taiwanese schools that are already established in Kumamoto for the influx of these workers. But you also said, something that's very true. The number of highly technically skilled workers to do this kind of work is limited. So Japan needs to accept and entice people from all over the world who are good at this, who have gone through a PhD program, to come to Japan. And so, as all of us know, it's that transition is not always easy. You have your lifestyle in your home country, and you finish your PhD, and you're going to come to Japan. You're going to bring your wife and your dog, and it's difficult. And so they have to accommodate that with English speaking schools, or schools that accommodate second languages that aren't even English. So it's a very big, very expensive push. But yes, I'm absolutely robustly confident in Japan achieving and actually exceeding what our expectations are now. Good question.
Well, thank you for that. Also, Rich, thank you for that question as well. Yes, my cat
Hi,
is
Rich.
okay.
Your cat
Yes,
is okay. I've
my
been
cat.
worried about it.
Yes, she's in the other room, just enjoying, the warm sunshine on the inside of the window. So that's yeah. Thank you very much for your concern. Maybe at some point, in the future podcast, she will show up on screen as well, so that you can see that she's fine
She
and
used to.
actually, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we're moving to Clubhouse now, and in Clubhouse we have a question from Patrick P. The question reads: J.D. Vance, who is known for his book highlighting addiction and social issues, and whose wife gave a nod to his tolerance of vegetarianism at the Republican convention. So I wonder, what is the opinion of this person in the eyes of the Japanese Communist Party?
I have no idea. I have no idea what the connection is between the Japan Communist Party and vegetarians. Um, I don't know. I just have to say I don't know. I'm not even going to go there.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we can find a connection somehow because the Communist Party is, but no, it's different, right? It's Komeito, and it's not Kyosanto. Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah, because
Did he say Komeito rather than
no,
Kyosanto?
no, he said Communist Party. So I
Yeah.
wonder, Patrick, whether you mean the Komeito or Kyosanto, because when it comes to Komeito, they are supported by. Uh, I cannot come up with the name of that church.
Yeah. The Sokagakai.
Yes, so Kagakkai, and yes, as a
There are a
religion,
lot of
they
vegetarians there.
yeah, probably there are, but that's not the Communist Party. That's Komeito. So yeah, if you can let us know. Oh, okay, let's see. From Patrick, what about the addiction and social issues aspect of the question?
Okay. Yeah,
Right.
that's a little bit more on point, Patrick. Thank you for
Yes,
the question.
thank you for that.
Um, yeah, JD Vance is an unknown commodity here in Japan. Excuse me. I think even for most Americans, and especially for expatriate Americans who live outside of the United States, JD Vance is not a highly known figure. Um, the fact when he made his speech and he had his mother there and he made those comments about addiction, I think it strikes a chord with a lot of people, especially the journey from addiction to sobriety.
Hmm.
But here in Japan, I don't see that as a big issue. You know how tough the Japanese are on importation of drugs. They're very swift, and the punishment is very severe for bringing in or manufacturing or selling narcotics,
Music.
that sort of thing,
Mhm.
or
Or even
using it.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it does happen. It is here in Japan, but it is not very prevalent. And so I think that the addiction issues are not very. There's there's a lot of focus on alcoholism and some of these other psychological, but even suicide is. They do have a ministry of what do they call it? Ministry of Happiness, I think, but it is in charge of suicide prevention. So there are
yeah.
issues here that loom far larger than addiction or that sort of thing. So I don't think it really generates a whole lot of the fact that um, J.D. Vance, as vice president candidate for Donald Trump, he wrote a book about it. I don't think it really has hit much of the radar here.
No,
But
it
I
has
sense there's more to your question. Um, is it Patrick?
Patrick. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So please fill us in. But if you're a first time listener, please continue to tune in and feed your questions to us. Hope we can
Yes,
respond to them.
Patrick, yes, he has a follow up comment. Well, you always say what happens in the US is important to Japan, and we have this problem here. Yes, that's true. But maybe what happens in the US in politics, the US politics is what we mean most of the time. And the social issues in the United States, I don't think that they have a lot of impact to the Japanese society and the Japanese
Yeah.
politics per se. It's mostly politics there. And I
Yeah.
think that we need to also clarify that, well, among a lot of I mean, a lot of people here working in Kasumi Gaseki, probably among a lot of people working in politics. So there is an understanding that, or not an understanding, there is an opinion there that they prefer to work with American politicians whom they know already and whose actions, upcoming actions they can predict to a certain extent. And I think that they don't know who JD Vance is, and of course there is, that volatility there, and they don't know what to expect. So probably, yeah, it's still difficult to talk about that. Maybe further down the road, when we know a little bit with a little bit more clarity what happens in the US,
Yeah.
politics will be able to comment on this.
Also, just 2 points that reinforce what you were saying, Maya. I think people in Japan don't care about J.D. Vance.
Hmm.
Um, they care about Donald Trump. They know who Trump is, and
Yeah,
Trump is a topic of conversation. He's a known entity. That's where the focus is. And the second point that I'd like to make is that there is absolutely no comparison with what's going on in the United States with regards to drugs or addiction or the issues that are caused there to what's going on in Japan. There is no comparison to be made there, as um, as much as you might want to say that there is an issue here, there is a problem, there are addicts. It pales in comparison. So I don't even think it hits the radar. Um, but I'm
mm.
hoping to be convinced otherwise.
Yes, indeed. Okay, and we will be watching, of course, politics and also social trends here in Japan, the economy as well. So thank you very much, Timothy. It seems that we have gone through all the questions and comments.
Yay!
Yay, that's the Yumenoshima Marina. How
Yes,
nice. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that backdrop with us. And well, I also want to say once again to everybody, thanks a lot for being with us. And also, Rich, please rest assured that my cat is fine and she's the queen of the house. She knows how to get what she wants all the time. So,
yeah.
yes, there is no mistake there. Okay, and yeah, that's a lot of boats behind you, Timothy.
Lots of boats. And since
Yeah.
it's the 3-day weekend, there are a lot of people here. You saw in the background people walking back and forth. It's
Mhm.
very active here. And Yumenoshima is right, it's almost downtown. It's very close to Shiodome and the Olympic Village.
Right.
But it's been here for many, many years, and it's yeah, it's a nice place to spend some
Yes.
time.
Nice.
And
Okay.
I've been
Thank.
out of the sun, and my phone didn't turn off.
Yes, it stayed cool and working, the most important part of all of this, right? Okay, and you didn't overheat either. So, to everybody who is watching us, we are in the middle of the Obon holidays, so it's still very hot outside. It's humid. It's very easy to get dehydrated without noticing that and to get a heat stroke. So, please stay in the shade, stay cool, hydrate regularly, take a lot of liquids, not alcohol, because alcohol dehydrate your body. So it should be saved, for the time when you're somewhere in the shade, or you have a lot of water near you as well. So Timothy, thanks a lot. I would like to once again give a shout out to our sponsors, Kanchu.com and James Howell and Houze Inc. With Hana Uroshisawa Howell. If you need bilingual services in the areas of buying and selling real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama, property management, investment property, also custom home design and construction, renovations, and commercial building construction, do not hesitate to contact James or Hannah or both, and you'll get your questions answered, and you'll get them answered either in English or Japanese, depending on your preference. Beautiful, beautiful, Timothy. Thank you very much for sharing that. And we'll be here once again on Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock when we will be talking with Dr. Joe Hug about small and medium-sized enterprises in Japan. And next Sunday at 8:20 when Timothy Langley will report from maybe Yume Noshima once again, or
We
a
don't know
different,
where.
we don't know where. Yes, and that's the beauty of it. Okay. So, but we'll know that during the podcast. Okay, thanks a lot. Have a great Obon holiday, and stay tuned for further updates.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Maya.
Thank you, Timothy.
See you soon.
See you soon. Yes.